So to dilute something means that you add water to a concentrated solution. So let's say I have a solution, I have 100 milliliters of, I don't know, something that's 6 molar. If you add water to it, it will no longer be 6 molar. It will have a lower molarity. You're diluting it. And there is actually a way to calculate dilutions mathematically, because in chemistry I have to order my supplies at a really high molarity. Like we have to order acids like over 10 molar, which I would never let you use. I wouldn't even let you use 6 molar because I don't want you to burn your face off or hurt yourself. So we have to dilute it down, and you do that by adding water. So let's say I had this and I add a bunch of water to it, and I make the new volume. It's now 500 milliliters. So that means I added 400 milliliters of water. It is no longer going to be 6 molar. It will have a new molarity, and we're going to figure out the new molarity with this formula that you already should have written down. So M1 original molarity, V1 original volume equals the new molarity times the new volume. You're just diluting something with this formula. So you're not changing how many moles of solute are in the substance. You're just making it more dilute. It's spread out across a bigger volume. Now, something that's different about this formula than the molarity formula, which, reminder, molarity is moles over liter. So M has to be molarity, capital M, but volume can be milliliters or liters. But V1 and V2 have to be the same unit. But they can be milliliters or liters. So it doesn't matter. And I mean, you could use another liter if you didn't want to use, or another unit if you didn't want to use milliliter or liter. And so let's look at how to calculate those. The first example, what original volume, so looking for original volume, V1, that's unknown, of a 15.8 molar HNO3 is nitric acid. So my M1 is 15.8 molarity, is required to make 250 milliliters of a 6 molar solution. So I want my new volume to be 250 milliliters and my new molarity to be 6.0 molar. You can see better. And so we just plug this into the formula. Super easy. M1 V1 equals M2 V2. My molarity 1 is 15.8. I don't know my V1, so just leave that. Equals my M2 is 6 times my V2, which is 250. And then grab your calculator. 6 times 250 is 1500 equals 15.8 times V1. Then to solve for V1, I need to divide each side by 15.8. That divides out, and we get V1 equals whatever 1500 divided by 15.8 is, and that is 94.9. Now, the unit for V2 is milliliters, so this unit will be milliliters. And so what this means when it comes to making a solution is you have a beaker, you would put 94.9 milliliters of the 15.8 molarity into it. Well, I wouldn't use a beaker. I would use like a flask. And then I'm going to add water until it gets to 250 milliliters. So add a bunch of water until it's up here. And then now it's going to be 250 milliliters, and the molarity is 6.0. So it's no longer 15.8. And that's how you dilute. We're going to do 2 more examples. So what's the new volume in liters if 0.251 milliliters of 3 molar LIBR is made to be 2 molar? This is going to be a really, really, really small number, So for the sake of that, let's change it to 251 milliliters. That way it's not, otherwise it'd be a bunch of zeros, which is annoying. Okay, so I'm looking for my new volume. So V2 is unknown. If 250 milliliters of 3 molar, so my V1, my original volume, is 251 milliliters, my original molarity was 3 molar, and I want my new molarity to be my M2, 2 molar. So you do need to be careful with these problems that you read them correctly. The 251 goes with the 3 molar. So you need to make sure that that M1 and that V1, they're the same. And I want the new volume of a 2 molar, so M2, V2. Which is really important you read the word problem correct. And then again, plug into this equation. My M1 was 3, my V1 was 251, equals my M2, which is 2 times V2. 251 times 3 is 753, equals 2 times V2. To get V2 by itself, divide each side by 2, and my V2 would be 376.5, and the unit is milliliters, because V1 is milliliters. Now the question asked for the volume in liters, so we need to change that. 376.5 milliliters. To change it to liters, you divide by 1,000. And that would be 0.3765 liters. With significant figures, you would use 3 sig figs, so 0.377 liters. Final answer. And that's why I changed the milliliters, because when it was 0.251, it's just going to be a really small number. Okay, and then third example. This one's a little different. So I want to know how many milliliters of water are added to 500 milliliters of a 3 molar NaBr to make it 2 molar. So my original volume, 500 milliliters. My original molarity, 3 molar. And my new molarity is 2 molar. And I don't know V2. So I'm going to solve for that first. M1 V1 equals M2 V2. M1 is 3 times V1 is 500 equals M2 is 2 times V2. 3 times 500 is 1,500 equals 2 times V2. Divide each side by 2. That cancels out. V2 is 750 milliliters. Now, I'm not done, because the problem didn't ask for what's the new volume. It wanted to know how many milliliters of water were added. So this comes back to how do you dilute something, and what I explained earlier. So how you dilute, again, is I have my little flask that I'm mixing stuff in, and I would fill it up to 500 milliliters and pour 3 molar in it. So I'd pour my 3 molar up to 500, and it would be full. And then I've done this calculation because I know I want to make 750 milliliters of a 2 molar. So you have to do calculations first. And then I'm going to add water, which I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to add water to 750 milliliters. So all of this is the water that's added. So you add water until you get to your V2. And then you stir it all together, mix it up, and now you have 750 milliliters of a 2 molar solution. But how much water did I add then? Well, my original volume was 500, and I add water until it gets to 750. Well, I added 250 milliliters of water then. So V2 represents the final volume of the new solution, not how much water you're adding. To figure out how much water you add, you take V2 minus V1. And that's how you make a solution. Well, a dilute solution.